So all the advice that you can get about, how to fix a relationship or communicate better, it's almost like you're beating your head against the wall if your body is just it's throwing you off like that.
Did you push record?
Thanks so much for joining us today on Our Second Act with Paige and Silka. I'm happy to welcome Dr. Laurie Blanscet to our program today. Dr. Laurie, thanks so much for joining us again.
Oh, I'm so happy to be back.
Well, we have done a lot of programming lately on relationships. Relationships after 50 is a big topic for our demo. Not just finding new love after 50 and all that goes along with that, but your marriage and what happens, especially in the menopausal years. And of course, hormones comes up. There are so many, and this is what we want to concentrate on today. How our hormonal fluctuations affect our relationships and what we need to understand about that and what we can do about it, Dr. Laurie.
That is a great question because so many people think about the night sweats and the hot flashes, but they don't realize that estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone in men and women affect our mood, and it can affect how you deal with things, how you communicate with your spouse or your loved one. So definitely in terms of emotional, how much you tolerate, that's a big one. And then there's the physical, because when your hormones are off, let's face it, as women, sex can hurt. And then for men, they might not get an erection. So that can affect the romantic connection as well.
Yeah. So you put that on top of, just I'll call it normal relationship issues. I mean, especially, it doesn't have to be a long-term relationship. It can be, maybe you just started with someone. But I think most people don't understand just how dramatic that can be. I mean, you deal with patients like this a lot, don't you?
Oh, yeah. And I always tell people when they're in a troubled relationship, once they get their hormones balanced, I have seen relationships just flourish and do better. If you have an underlying strong relationship to start with that went bad because of hormones, it can fix it. Now, there are other cases of bad relationships, but for the most part, I've seen people come to me as couples where they were close to divorce, and by getting their hormones balanced, they feel better. They're eating better. They're exercising. They're communicating better. They're having sex, and their relationships are better.
Yeah. Well, what do you here's what I'm getting at. Okay, I was doing some more research, and we've talked about this a lot, but in just preparing myself for the interview, I wanted to see what other people are out there writing about hormones. And just there is such little good information about balancing, and especially when it comes to bioidentical balancing. Let's touch on that briefly. What that involves versus your synthetic or traditional hormone therapy.
Well, with bioidentical, to understand, it's biologically, chemically the same as what your body makes. So it makes sense to replace what's missing in the form that it should be in your body, correct? And what happens, what people don't realize, is starting at around age 35, men and women, we start declining, and our bodies start declining. We lose muscle, we lose bone, we lose hair, focus, memory, aside from the other symptoms that we know about with the hot flashes and night sweats. And what happens is when you look at older people, they decline because their hormones decline as a piece of the aging. And when you balance the hormones, what happens is you can stay well and stay younger longer. And that's my philosophy: live well and die quick later in life, right? Don't deteriorate for 30 years. And that's what the hormones do. And people don't realize it's like gas in your car. You can't get anywhere without gas.
No. And the main, like another thing that I didn't find is the importance of testosterone for women and estrogen for men.
Right, because both men and women have the same hormones. It's not like women have estrogen and men have testosterone only. Women have testosterone, obviously less, but we have it, and it helps our muscle tone, our bones, our mood. It's one of the best antidepressants there is. and it doesn't hurt the libido, you know. And then men, they have some estrogen, because if they didn't, they would be overly assertive, overly aggressive, wouldn't feel good. So estrogen balances their moods and helps their bones and skin as well. So very, very important to be in balance. You don't want too much of anything. You want them in the right balance.
Yeah. Well, and then of course, one of the big complaints of men, or well, of women too, is as we get, just deep in this menopausal madness, is that it seems like, my wife is going crazy, or I feel like I did feel like I was going crazy at first in my early 50s. And people just don't understand that, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I hear this I've had literally people cry in my office and just think they're going nuts. And once they get balanced, it's humbling how much in control our hormones are. But think about it, like when you eat sugar, when you eat something really bad for you, you don't feel good. It affects your mood. Same thing with hormones. When the hormones are not right, it affects your mood. And when that's off day in, day out, you're not going to feel good.
Yeah. So all the advice that you can get about, how to fix a relationship or communicate better, it's almost like you're beating your head against the wall if your body is just, it's throwing you off like that.
Right. And I would say the first thing for people to realize, it's not their fault, because I think it gets into the blame game and people get defensive, and to realize, hey, this happens. You could be a great person doing all the right things, but if the hormones are off, you don't feel right. And once you get them balanced, it doesn't create a different you. It creates the best you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I guess, obviously I'm big, and well, you are, on integrative medicine. The whole, the full body and mind approach to, helping somebody with these problems. It's very annoying to me that it's so difficult to, one, communicate how important this is, what specifically needs to be done, and then how somebody can actually go out and find somebody that knows what they're doing. I mean, what I'm saying is that, when I briefly was not seeing you there for about 6 months because I went to somebody who lived here close to me, I was treated completely different with, the hormone replacement. And it was terrible. And here I thought I was doing something right.
Right.
And so how do people that don't understand this, how can you advise them to get help and to get the balancing done that they actually need?
That's a good question, because there are doctors out there who don't do this from their heart. I mean, I am a menopausal patient since 38, and 12 years later, I feel great, and this is my passion to help people. So I guess the biggest thing is to find a doctor who understands it. And I think a doctor who's actually experienced it, so a doctor who's been in menopause, or a guy that's been in andropause, somebody who's experienced it, because let's face it, if you're 30, they're probably not going to understand enough to help you. You kind of have to experience it to help. And number two, that they continually get trained. It's not a weekend course. I can't even begin to tell you the hours of training I've gone through, and I continue to do. So I wish we had a better way, but I can tell you A4M, which I told you that place, they actually do list doctors that are properly trained.
Okay.
And that's a great source.
We will link to them to that source again for a bioidentical or integrative physicians. We're starting to come to the end, and I think the takeaway for me, why I want to do this segment with you, is once again to raise the awareness that your relationship problems, whatever they may be, hormones might drastically fix that. I mean, I'll let you close.
Yeah, it really is. It's people to realize there's just like think of your body like a car. There's many parts, and if you don't have gas in the car, then it can't run well. So you might have the engine running well, you might have the oil, you might have everything else, but if you don't have the gas, it doesn't work. And so people need to realize and look at the hormones like the gas.
Yeah.
And that is important. And you like to put your head in the sand and think it doesn't matter, but it does.
Yeah. Well, and it's certainly something that I want everybody to be aware of. I know it made a huge difference in my life when I balanced I mean, day and night, I felt like a different person. And that's a message that we want to keep coming back to. We haven't done it in a while. And I thank you for coming on, and we'll link to all of Dr. Laurie's information, and see you next time on our second act with Paige and Silka.
Perfect. I look forward to it.
If you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right over here. Just click on through to YouTube, and when you see that little bell next to the subscribe button, hit that too, and you'll be notified every time we post a new video. Thanks. See you next time.